Hello everyone, my name is Aina Alia binti Mat Saman, and today I will be presenting about Park Geun-Hye corruption case. So before we look at the corruption case, let's first understand why this is important issue. So, corruption is one of the biggest barriers to good governance because it reduces transparency, accountability, and public trust. When leaders abuse their power for personal benefit, it can affect the country's political and economic stability. Now, moving on to Park Geun-hye background, she became the South Korea's first female president after winning the 2012 presidential election. She was also the daughter of former president, that is Park Geun-hye, so many people had high expectations for her leadership. During her campaign, she promised new era of hope, focusing on growth, democracy, and improving relations with North Korea. However, her presidency collapsed because of the Choi Soon-sil corruption case, which eventually led to her impeachment. The main cause of Park Geun-hye's downfall was the Choi Soon-sil gate scandal. Choi Soon-sil was Park's close friend, but she held no official government position. Despite that, she had access to confidential government documents, edited presidential speeches, and influenced important government decisions. Because of this, she was known as the shadow president. The investigation also revealed that Park and Choi pressured large companies such as Samsung, Lotte, Hyundai, SK, and LG to donate 77.4 billion won to foundation controlled by Choi. In return, this company allegedly received government favors, which was considered as bribery. Besides that, Choi's daughter also received preferential treatment in university admission, and Park also was accused of misusing National Intelligence Service funds. Apart from corruption, there were also several government failures did by Park Geun-hye. The most significant was the Sewol ferry disaster in 2014, where 304 people, mostly students, lost their life. The government's slow response and Park's unexplained 7 hours absence seriously damaged the public trust. Other issues include the blacklisting of artists, the Comfort Women Agreement, the tight deployment, and the poor handling of the MERS outbreak. All of these issues caused public confidence to decline and eventually triggered nationwide candlelight protests. The chronology of the cases is Park entered politics in 1998 and became president in 2012. In 2014, the Sewol ferry disaster weakened public confidence in her leadership. Then, in October 2016, evidence showed that Choi Soon-sil had access to confidential government documents and was influencing in state affairs. This led to candlelight protests where millions of South Korea demand Park for resignation. In December 2016, she was impeached by the National Assembly, and in March 2017, the Constitutional Court officially removed her from the office. Finally, she was convicted of bribery, abuse of power, and corruption, receiving a final prison sentence of 20 years. Overall, this case demonstrates the importance of transparency, accountability, and ethical leadership in maintaining good governance. Thank you. That's all my part. I will pass the presentation for my next group members.
Okay, so the first slide is about unconstitutional power sharing, which is shadow governance. So the first major issue was what many call shadow governance. President Park allowed her close friend Choi Soon-sil, who held no official government position, to influence national decision. Choi had access to classified documents, edited presidential speeches, and even influenced cabinet appointments. This violated constitutional procedures because important government decisions should only be made by authorized officials. Okay, so the second slide is about the institutional coalition with chaebols. The administration also collaborated with South Korea's largest business groups known as the chaebols. Companies such as Samsung, Lotte, and Hyundai, SK Group, and LG was pressured to donate a total of 77.4 billion won to the MIR and the Case Sports Foundations, which were controlled by Choi Soon-sil. In return, these companies received government favors such as business approvals and support for corporate deals. This represents a clear case of bribery and abuse of power. Next is the nepotism and the misuse of public funds. Corruption also extends to nepotism and misuse of government funds. Samsung financed luxury horses for Choi's daughter, Chung Yoo-ra. Meanwhile, Ehwa Women's University gave her unfair admissions and academic privileges. President Park, who also found guilty of receiving 3.5 billion won in secret funds from the National Intelligence Service, which he used for personal expenses instead of official government purpose. Next, I'm going to talk about the erosion of public trust. Public trust had already been weakened by the government's handling of the MV Sewell ferry disaster in 2014, where 304 people lost their lives. Many criticized the slow rescue efforts and questioned President Park's unexplained 7-hour absence during the emergency. These events damaged her credibility and increased public dissatisfaction. Next is the Candlelight Revolution. After the corruption scandal became public, around 17 million South Koreans participated in peaceful candlelight protests between October 2016 and March 2017. Citizens demanded accountability, transparent governance, and President Park's resignation. These protests demonstrated the strength of public participation in protecting democracy. Next is the political and legal consequences. The public protests and investigations result in President Park's impeachment. On 9 December 2016, the National Assembly voted 234 to 56 in favor of impeachment. The Constitutional Court unanimously upheld the decision on 10 March 2017. She was later convicted of bribery, extortion, and abuse of power, receiving a 20-year prison and a sentence and a fine of 20 billion won.
Hello everyone, my name is Nur Intan Humayra bin Ismail. I will be presenting my part, which is lesson learned from the Park Geun-Hye corruption case. This corruption case is one of the most significant political scandal in South Korea. It not only affected the country political system but also teaches valuable lesson about integrity, accountability, and ethical leadership. In my presentation, I will explain the lesson learned from three perspectives, which are individual, South Korea as a country, and businesses together with other stakeholders. Firstly, I would like to discuss the lesson learned for individual. One of most important lessons from this case is that leader must always demonstrate integrity and ethical leadership. In this case, former President Park Geun-hye allowed her close friend Choi Soon-sil to influence important government decisions even though she had no official position. This clearly shows that personal relationships should never influence professional responsibilities. Another important lesson is that power should be treated as a public trust rather than personal property. Leaders should always make decisions based on the public interest and have the courage to reject unethical influence. Without integrity, public trust can easily be destroyed. Next, I will explain the lesson learned for South Korea. Although this scandal created a serious political crisis, South Korea's democratic institution remains strong. The National Assembly impeached President Park Geun-hye and the Constitutional Court later upheld the decision. This proved that no one is above the law, regardless of their position. The case also highlights the importance of transparency in government and stronger anti-corruption measures. In addition, millions of South Koreans participate in peaceful candlelight protests to demand justice. This demonstrates that democracy becomes stronger when citizens actively participate in protecting it. Now let's move to the lesson learned for businesses and other stakeholders. Several large companies such as Samsung, Lotte, and SK Group were accused of making financial contribution to foundation linked to Choi Soon-sil in exchange for political benefit. This case showed the importance of good corporate governance and strict compliance with anti-bribery laws. It also highlights the important role of whistleblowers and investigative journalists in exposing corruption. Businesses should understand that they are responsible not only to shareholders but also to society. Ethical businesses practice help maintain public trust and ensure long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Now I'll explain about critical analysis of governance failure. Corruption reflected weakness in the governance system. Corruption happened because the government system was weak and failed to prevent abuse of power. Next is lack of transparency and accountability. Government decisions were not open and leaders were probably held to responsible. The third one is weak checks and balance failed to detect abuse of power. The monitoring system was too weak to stop corruption early. Next one is concentration of executive power increased corruption risk. Too much power was given to one leader and increasing the risk of the corruption. Next one is informal influence weak democratic governance and public trust, and unofficial influence government decision reducing the public trust. Next, I'll explain about leadership and decision making failures. Park failed to separate personal relationship from official duties. She allowed personal relationship to affect the government's decision. Choi Soon-sil influenced government without legal authority. Choi had no official position but still influenced with the important decisions. Serious conflict of interest and ethical leadership failure. Personal interests were placed above the public interest. The next one is decision making was highly centralized because most decisions were made by only a few people. The last one is limited transparency and consultation. Decisions were made without enough discussion. And reduced accountability within government institutions. It became difficult to hold leaders responsible for their actions. The third area of analysis is institutional accountability. Anti-corruption agencies failed to detect misconduct early. They failed to identify corruption before it became a scandal. Investigative journalists exposed the scandal. Journalists uncovered the corruption and informed to the public. Institution lacks independence and investigative authority. They were not independent enough to investigate powerful leaders. Next is independent media, prosecutor and civil society ensure accountability. These groups work together to hold responsible of the accountable. Strong democratic accountability requires independent institutions. Independent institutions are essential for a healthy democracy. Another important aspect is political influence on business. Large corporations donate to Choice Foundation. Big companies donate money to foundation linked to Choice. Allegations of receiving favorable government treatment. They were suspected of receiving benefits from the governments. Next, political influence undermine fair competition. Political connection create an unfair business environment. Government business cooperation require transparency because cooperation should need to be open and follow the law. The last one is strong legal and ethical standard protect public trust. Strong laws and ethical need to be prevent the corruption. Finally, I conclude with the key reflections. Corruption results from both individual misconduct and institutional weakness. Both unethical behavior and weak system cause the corruption. The next one is excessive executive power and weak oversight enable corruption. Too much power and weak monitoring allow corruption to happen. Punishment alone cannot prevent future corruption. Strong systems are needed and not just a punishment. Government must strengthen transparency, accountability, institutional independence, and ethical leadership. This helps to prevent the future corruptions.
To conclude this case, demonstrate how corruption and the abuse of power weaken and reduce public trust in the government. The investigation into Park Geun-Hye action result in her impeachment, coercion, and imprisonment. This shows that no individual, regardless of their position, is above the law. The case also highlights the importance of South Korea legal institutions and its citizens who work together through peaceful and lawful process to restore accountability. Overall, this case reminds us that integrity, transparency, and accountability and a strong system of checks and balance are essential for good governance and maintains public confidence. Lastly, we look at recommendations. Based on this case, we recommend several measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. First, government should strengthen independent anti-corruption agency and ensure effective institutions oversight. The second, transparency should be improved through regular audits and public disclosure of government activities. Third, ethical leadership should be promoted by providing integrity training and holding public officials accountable for their actions. In addition, government should protect press freedom and whistleblowers so that corruption can be exposed safely without fear of retaliations. By implementing these recommendations, governments can build great public trust, reduce corruption, and create a more transparent and accountable system. Thank you.